Hello and welcome to Represent NYC election coverage. I'm Ben Max, your host and the executive editor of Gotham Gazette. Today, we're pleased to bring you a debate in the Democratic primary for City Council District 7, which includes parts of Manhattan, particularly areas in northern Manhattan, such as Manhattan Valley, Manhattanville, Morningside Heights, and Hamilton Heights. I will soon introduce you to 10 Democrats competing in the primary, the vote for which will occur in June. They are joining us for today's debate. This race is part of the 2021 New York City election cycle, which is well underway and poised to be the most significant municipal election in decades. All of city government is on the ballot, and because so few incumbents are eligible to run for their current seats due to term limits, New Yorkers are electing many new office holders and the next roster of leadership for our city. There will be a new mayor of New York City elected here in 2021, as well as a new city controller, several new borough presidents, and many new city council members in the 51-seat chamber, including the representative of this district, District 7. Now, there are a number of incumbents that are eligible for and seeking re-election as well, including the city's public advocate and a number of city council members. There's a very crowded and competitive open primary for Manhattan District Attorney, and still more. Party primaries are set for June, and the general election in the fall will culminate on November 2nd. This is the first full set of municipal elections that will feature both early voting as well as the new ranked choice voting system. Now, ranked choice voting we explain in a show of its own, so find that and check it out. But it is at play in this primary on the Democratic side for City Council District 7. So you should be ready to rank your choices as you see fit. Now, this election cycle would be of enormous importance even under more usual circumstances with how much of city government is turning over. But it's unfolding at a time of great crisis for our city, raising the stakes of the decisions that you, the voter, will make. The new wave of city leadership will quite clearly make or break the city's recovery from the devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic and its many impacts on health, families, jobs, housing, and much, much more. New York City, of course, faced a number of crises even before the pandemic, as well as myriad other challenges in this district, in Manhattan as a borough, and across the city. So it's an important time of choosing here in New York City, and we're pleased to bring you many individual interviews with candidates for citywide and borough-wide offices, as well as these city council debates. We hope this and other debates and interviews will help you sort through your many choices and make informed decisions when it's time to vote in the June primaries and the fall general election. So let's get to today's debate among the candidates for City Council District 7. City Council is a position that includes key responsibilities and powers around constituent services, local problem solving, legislating, budgeting, making land use decisions, and much more. So joining me now by Zoom are those 10 Democratic candidates for City Council District 7. Sean Abreu, Marty Allen Cummings, Dan Cohen, Keith Harris, Stacy Lynch, Lena Melendez, Maria Ordonez, Corey Ortega, Ray Sanchez Jr., and Luis Tejada. Thank you all for being here. Welcome. So briefly, the rules of the debate are such. There will be 1 minute for each of you to answer each question. We're not doing broad opening statements, but my first question is something of an opening prompt. Then you'll have a minute to answer each question in each round. We will do a brief lightning round of yes, no, or short answer questions, and then closing statements of 1 minute. If someone criticizes you or disagrees with you, I will give you a quick chance to respond, but we're not going to have time for a lot of back and forth. Don't be surprised if I ask you some follow-up questions briefly after each of your answers or any of your answers to get a little more clarity on something you've said, or push you a little further on giving voters more sense of what you're thinking, what you believe in, and what you'll try to do as a city council member. I will start with a different person each round, but we're going to go in alphabetical order each time by last name. So for this question at the beginning, we'll start in the order I listed you, starting with Sean Abreu. The question is, what specific qualifications can you cite that prepare you to become a city council member? And what specific things have you done in the service of the public that voters should know about? So please tell us about your specific qualifications and your specifics of public service that make you the best choice to be the next city council member. Sean, over to you.
Well, Ben, thank you for your question. I believe there are two specific qualifications that prepares me to meet this moment. my personal shared experiences living in the district. I went from being evicted as a child to becoming a tenants' rights attorney, helping keep families in their homes. I think that that shared experience is something that this moment needs. Right now, the pandemic has cost our neighbors' lives, put people out of work. Food insecurity is on the rise, and an avalanche of eviction is soon to consume our city. As a tenants' rights attorney, in terms of public service, I've helped keep families in their homes, families in the Upper West Side and the Washington Heights and everywhere in between. And so I think that my background as an attorney, but also my understanding as of the shared needs and the experiences of our families in this district, I think is a unique perspective that I'll be bringing.
Thank you. Marty.
Good morning, and thank you so much. Good to see everyone. I'm Marty Allen Cummings, they, them, theirs. And yeah, my path to running for office is not typical. And I think that's what sets me apart as the qualified candidate for this role. I've been a drag artist my entire adult life in New York City, working in our small bars and restaurants, mom and pop bars and restaurants. And being a drag artist is giving me the experience of what it's like to be a gig worker, living paycheck to paycheck, like so many thousands, hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers, waking up on the first of the month, figuring out which bill gets paid and which bill doesn't. I've been in recovery for 10 years and know how important it is to fund our addiction services and mental health care services and helping those who are in need. And drag, like I said, it isn't a typical path to running, but it's one that taught me about community building and community organizing. It was drag artists who took me to Occupy Wall Street 11 years ago and led me to Get Local, block by block, where I now serve on the community board, CB9 on the Senior Issues Committee, the Ali Fournier Center for Homeless LGBTQ Youth, where I'm on their board of directors, the RDJ Refugee Shelter right here in our district, and has taught me that working with our neighbors in service is what's needed in this role. I'm proud to have started a mutual aid group that hands out PPE and meals because this is about being of service to others. And I'll just close with, I'm through this work as a drag artist, I was appointed by City Council to serve on the Nightlife Advisory Board to help our small businesses.
Thank you. Dan.
Thanks, Ben. I am a lifelong resident of the district, 50 years. I'm a New York City public school graduate and public school parent. My kid is now in 3rd grade. So I have an appreciation of the public schools, and I serve on the PTA. Professionally, I work for an affordable housing not-for-profit, the Housing Partnership, and I've been in the affordable housing arena for some time now. And I've seen up close how critical affordable housing is both to the district and citywide. And that's why also I serve on Community Board 9, similar to Marty. The urgency of the issue has led me to call for 1,000 new units of affordable housing in the district on sites that are either owned or controlled by New York City. I've also been advocating for a new transportation stop at 125th Street and 12th Avenue, which would create a multimodal transportation zone by accessing the Metro North and the Amtrak lines at 125th and 12th. We could put a new station there, and that would get folks to Midtown in 8 minutes and also make a fully ADA accessible ride. I serve, in addition to the community board, I serve on Friends of Morningside Park for a number of years now. I helped start another park group, Friends of Annabella Vilas Playground. So parks and playgrounds, preserving affordable housing, our public education system, and transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith, over to you.
Good morning, New York City. My name is Keith Harris. I'm from Frederick Douglass Community Houses from the Manhattanville area, Manhattan Valley area. And the reason why I'm here is the sum equation of everyone in the community and opportunities presented to me as a young man. My background is in community organization, as well as a focus in broadcast communications and engineering. The thing that makes me best suited for this position is the fact that I owe a lot of my success to understanding 2 things, trades and technology. I feel that those are the 2 factors that will help us innovate our way out of a post-pandemic world, and not only to flourish to get to where we were before, but beyond.
Okay, thank you. Stacy.
Thank you, Ben. As many of you know, I grew up in this political world. And I will say, because of that, I'm running on a platform of equity. My father was the campaign manager to David N. Dinkins, the first African-American mayor of New York City. And just witnessing that history allowed me to understand the importance of equity and diversity within our leadership. And so throughout the years, I have been a strong proponent of equity throughout this country, and particularly the city and the district. I attended law school, and I'm a practicing attorney, or was a practicing attorney. I worked in the mayor's office for close to 10 years. While in the mayor's office, I started amazing programs such as the Race and Equity Task Force, Brothers, Sisters Thrive. And then also within the community, I started a task force to address the inequities around COVID. And so my platform throughout this campaign is equity, equality, coalition building, and women in leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena.
Hi, thank you, Ben. I want to thank MNN for this opportunity to present my platform and my ideas. I'm a trained social worker with over 20 years of experience, familiar with the issues that plague our communities. A housing activist and organizer, I've been fighting for affordable housing, against displacement, against rezonings with a mandatory inclusionary housing and the area median income. I've been organizing tenants to form associations, helping them to fight against landlord harassment, overcharges, illegal evictions, and displacement. I have been doing the work, boots on the ground in the community. I am, I'm the real deal. I believe that homelessness is something that can be eradicated with a housing first initiative. Not using developers and EDC. The plan for the city to identify sites and follow housing first model, build community land trusts.
Thank you.
Housing is a human right.
We're going to come back to housing, so we'll talk more about that soon. Maria.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Ordonez, and I am qualified for this position because I am a lifelong resident of West Harlem, where I've organized and I've worked together with people to fight for tenants' rights, to fight for issues that really have mattered to us, like a Green New Deal, Medicare for all. And I've been doing this work in my community. And on top of that, the lived experiences that I have will be brought to the city council to fight for these issues that really matter to us. And on top of that, I am 21 years old. I'm the youngest one here in this forum right now. And that age and who I am shows that the impossible is in fact possible. I've proven so many people wrong with my campaign right now, and that's what we're doing. We're sending a message that anyone can run for city council, that anyone can run for any position they like. You only have to be 18 years old.
Okay, thank you. And Corey.
Hey everyone, my name is Corey Ortega. Some of my qualifications are my 12 years of experience in nonprofit organizing, starting out as a tenant organizer, knocking on people's doors, not just fighting for affordable housing, but making sure people maintain their rent stabilized apartments, have heat and hot water, and don't have to deal with landlord harassment. I've worked with VSOs to amend the human rights law to protect veterans as a class, worked in the New York State Assembly as a constituent services liaison, helping our community with the issues we see today. And lastly, working with the New York City Council's Black, Latino, Asian caucus, at that time 26 council members, dealing with legislation and budget. But like I said, these are just some of the qualifications, but keep in mind, we all have great qualifications. And as long as one of us makes it, our district will do well in the future.
All right, what a nice note there. Ray Sanchez, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm going to point to three things. One, my 7 years as general counsel and policy manager in the Office of the Bronx Borough President. I'm going to point to my current service as CEO of Aguila, which is a city-funded homeless services organization. And third, my general 20-year career across just about every sector you can think of, whether it's being an adjunct in the CUNY system, whether it's being a compliance officer at a $1 trillion private bank, whether it's government campaigns. I've worked in just about every sector you can think of, an attorney with a 20-year career across multiple sectors. You can't legislate in a vacuum. You need legislators who know a lot about a lot of different things. Coming back to my 7 years in the borough president's office, I'm very proud to have my former boss's endorsement. We worked on city and state issues because my former boss spent 13 years in the assembly. So we were constantly lobbied on city and state issues, city and state legislation. I'm proud that we passed a living wage law when I was in government that actually put money in the hands of real New Yorkers. We did real zonings. We made the city restructure a payphone to Wi-Fi conversion. It was Lincoln NYC. And lastly, I've done plenty. I'm very familiar with rezonings. Thank you.
Thank you. Luis.
Hello, my name is Luis Tejada. I'm an electrical engineer and I graduated also from City College of Mathematics, professor in college, also in high school. I'm being in this community since 1985, where I grew up, my family, in public school in Pier 75, West End and 95th Street. So I founded the Middle Assisted Community Center in 2001 in order to provide legal services, organized tenants association, more than 200 tenant associations from West Harlem all the way to Washington Heights to fight the landlords like Pinnacle, Grupo, Vantage. Most of the landlords that want to displace the community. I also be part of the co-founder of the Manhattan Law for Sale, the Coalition to Preserve the Community Against the Action Plan 97C 2008. Also co-founder of the Language Access Coalition to provide legal service, language service to clients or patients that go to the Presbyterian Hospital. I think it's in this group. I am the most experienced guy. I'm the other one, by the way. And I think it's that when people choose me of a choice, they have the chance to choose anybody else in the second choice. I'm gonna be your first city council in this issue to represent everybody.
A reference to ranked choice voting there, which everybody should keep in mind as they're watching this debate, and others that they might be able to vote in. You can rank your preferences 1 through 5 when you get to the voting booth. All right, question time for Keith. We're gonna start this round with Keith Harris, go in the same order. The question is this, and you have to do a lot in 1 minute each. I understand that can be challenging, but the question is this: name 2 specific challenges facing the district and something as a city council member that you would do about each. A specific challenge in the district and something you do about it. 2 times, 2 challenges, 2 specific things you want to work on in the city council. Keith, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to use everyday conversation for everyday people. The 2 challenges are crime and then also opportunities presented to young people. We live in an ecosystem where a community is only as strong as the hope, the opportunities, and resources of those that may feel that they're getting left out. You create opportunities for them as well as those that are in the middle of the pack, and they have a fail-safe of knowing that as city councilman, I'll take care of them, I'll protect them, I'll create the opportunities to succeed. Then you alleviate the element of crime, because crime has both sides. You have those that want to hurt people, and you have those that commit crimes out of lack of having resources. So you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and that's what I plan to do efficiently and effectively as the councilman for District 7.
Keith, can you name one thing that would look like? Is there one program, one type of policy you try to implement to bring those types of resources and opportunities to the youth of the district?
Yes, for one, I would eliminate this artificial intelligence, ground drone, robot dog, paramilitary artillery that we have on the streets. 1 robot dog costs $80,000. There's $20,000 in insurance and upgrades. The person that has to operate gets paid 6 figures, 100. So you're looking at $200,000 for that piece of equipment on the street. If you just go with the dog alone and you remove that from the budget, $80,000, excuse me.
All right, so you're looking for budget inefficiencies, especially
$80,000,
NYPD.
it can employ 20 kids for an entire summer, 10 weeks, paying them $400 a week.
All right, Stacy, over to you. 2 specific district challenges or issues and specific things you do to address them as a city council member. Go ahead.
Ben, that's a tough question. I have a long list, but I'll just give you 2 today.
There's every district has a lot of challenges.
I know. So I'll start with small businesses and affordable housing. We know I have a big dog. I walk through the district every day with my dog Bear, and I see the for rent or close signs. You know, if we're talking about big retail boxes, that's the big retail boxes, closed storefronts. So we need to address those. And then obviously affordable housing, Columbia University, Cathedral St. John. All of these big institutions are huge developers in these areas. So we need to address the affordable housing issue within this area. We're scheduled to lose 2,000 affordable housing units. And so I'm proposing that we adjust the AMI requirement for low income housing. I want an advocate within my office that can address all housing issues. And in regards to small businesses, we need to reinvest in small businesses, whether it is, you know, creating worker co-ops or ensuring that large institutions like Columbia are contracting with local businesses within the district.
Okay, thank you. And we will go to Lena.
So my strongest issues, the ones that I have been fighting for the most, have been affordable housing and small businesses. I fought for the SBJSA. I would fight for that again.
That's the Small Business Job Survival Act, for those unfamiliar, that would set some new lease terms to help small businesses.
That would afford 10-year leases and the right to binding arbitration. And commercial rent stabilization, complete with RGB for our small businesses. On the affordable housing front, we need to stop the rezonings, put a moratorium on the rezonings, no more. And Corey Johnson's bill has to be stopped with the master plan. The city has to identify land to develop CLTs and a housing first program. Let's eradicate homelessness. We have more compassion for a lost puppy or a lost kitten on the street than homeless people, and that's just morally wrong.
Okay, thank you. Maria.
All right, so, like was said before, there are multiple issues in this district, but two, for me, really important ones and really dear to me are housing and education. We have a housing crisis in District 7, and we need to fight for truly affordable housing. And that means making sure we're dismantling systems in place right now, like the mandatory inclusionary housing program that are incentivizing private developers instead of supporting tenants. We need to make sure that we make sure that Columbia University is actually giving back to the community and making sure that they follow through with their community benefits agreement. And at the same time, we need more transparency in land use procedures like ULURP and beyond that. With education, I'm the product of the public school system. We need to make sure, and I know this firsthand, we need to make sure that schools are fully funded. That means access to universal broadband, universal after school programs, and a path to higher education, making sure that we have tuition-free CUNY colleges. Do we fight for that, for a new deal for CUNY and make sure that everyone has access to education?
And just to be clear on mandatory inclusionary housing, that you would look in the city council to undo that change to the city's zoning rules?
Yes.
Or you're against just more using it in the district?
I'm against using it citywide, and I think we need a more comprehensive view of zoning and making sure that the community has a voice in it.
Okay, Corey, over to you. 2 district issues and what you try to do about them.
Sure. I'm going to start with gun violence. Right now, we've seen in the news, and I think a recent poll in New York, one where public safety is an issue. I want to double down on cure violence organization like Street Corner Resources in my district. And specifically, I would use the $400,000 that are allotted to a council member in discretionary funding and spread it among that and other organizations to tackle that issue. Specifically, they would come out with preventative care. They would come out before shootings occur, and also job placement, information, conversation, real outreach, right? Safe within the parameters of COVID still. And I'm expecting a follow-up question for you on that. Also, affordable housing. What I would like to pass, as City Council has the right as a body, is that any city property, any developer or would want either city subsidies or build on city property for it to be truly affordable, not just AMI affordable on the federal level, truly affordable in tiers. And if the feedback is that people won't build or developers, then we work with our nonprofit organizations where they won't really focus on the profit margin, but on the marginalized. What do you got?
Is there room for that city-owned land? Is there room for new private development using mandatory inclusionary housing that leverages that private development for some affordable housing? In your mind, is there room for that in the district?
I have it in my policy. At my age, I would not support it any longer. I do believe that we need comprehensive reform to the ULURP process, including the way that the agencies interact with each other and more community feedback. But no, I'm not supportive of AMIH. A lot of the housing groups and feedback and research have shown that that is not really truly affordable for the
We're gonna talk more about housing and affordability in the next round of questions, so we'll leave that there for now. Ray, over to you on district issues.
Great. So 2 things that I would focus on are small businesses, but I would look at how we're capping fees on platforms like DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Green and SubHub and Seamless. Before the pandemic, New York One did a great piece on how we had so many closed storefronts prior to the pandemic up on 163rd, which is a real shame. So we need to, and the fact that DoorDash came out this week, marketing a discounted platform for small businesses and restaurants just shows you how much these platforms are gouging our restaurants that we need very much to bring the city back. So that's one. Secondly, we need more co-ops, not less, whether it's investing in HDFCs or working with convert rentals, convert all this glut of new rentals into co-ops for essential workers so we can stabilize and give people a path to home ownership.
All right, thank you. Luis.
All right, my first priority for this as a city council member is to pass the Survival Act, Just Survival Act, that I said, Lena. So this is most important because our community depends on the small business jobs. So are we losing the small business all over the city? Not only Hamilton Heights, Washington Heights. I said our families are suffering. If they don't have money to pay their rent, they're gonna be beaten by the landlord. So this is very important for our community. Also, giving right to those tenants. So 10-year leases, eliminating rent taxes, and to have a fair rent for them. So the second one is housing. Housing is an issue that affects everybody. So I have a plan to from the city that the landlord can sell those buildings that they think is that they are no more profit for them after we passed the laws in 2018. Nobody. So I have a plan already that going to submit that those buildings can be purchased by the tenants. So it's a huge plan that I read already. So everybody gonna see it when I become a city council.
Okay, thank you. Sean, over to you.
Well, thank you, Ben. Well, the issues that I'm fighting for are closely related to my experiences. As I said before, I went from being evicted as a child to becoming a tenant's right attorney. I think we need to expand right to counsel for tenants facing eviction. Yesterday, Mark Levine, who has endorsed our campaign, by the way, passed his landmark legislation, right to counsel, and it was in effect yesterday, now to be in effect everywhere in the city. But now we have to expand the income restrictions. Currently under the law, if you're 200% above the federal poverty line, you're covered. But we want to increase it to 400% above the federal poverty line to include more families. We need to fight for deeply affordable housing using the extremely low income ELA term sheets to make sure that it's actually affordable, truly affordable, like Corey said. We also need to make sure that we're working to expand education opportunities. I went from being held back in the 4th grade to graduating from Columbia University because of investments in after-school program for our kids. I know what's possible when we invest in our kids and in their education, which is why I'm fighting for universal after school. And I will make sure to allocate our discretionary funds and capital improvements to address the needs of our students comprehensively. And I want to establish a community a youth center at our public housing, starting in grand houses.
Okay, Marty, over to you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, like so many of my colleagues here, housing is the big issue facing our district. We need to take on the real estate development industry and fight for tenants and have community-led coalitions. Speaking about housing, we need to cap people's rent at 30% of their income so they're actually able to afford housing, and we need to make sure that we're providing aid for our unhoused neighbors, our neighbors experiencing homelessness. A roof is a right. We need to make sure that we're providing city funding to get everyone access to long-term sustainable housing. And the other issue that I think is a crisis in our city and across the world is environmental justice. And we can start to combat that on the local level by implementing a Green New Deal for our city, for our public housing, and for our public schools, using infrastructure dollars that we're going to be getting billions of dollars from the federal government in recovery. Put that money into environmental justice, renewable Rikers, making sure that we have money for community-led solar roofing, and then smaller changes like composting. Above 107th Street, there's no city-funded composting.
Marty, when you spoke about homelessness and putting more resources there, is there a specific type of program that you're referring to? Are you referring to building more low-income housing? Are you referring to increasing voucher values? Is there something specific that you have in mind there?
Sure, we need to be investing in our safe havens for our community. We need to be investing in the vouchers, like you mentioned, but our safe havens, making sure, I supported the guys at the Lucerne because they needed a place to live, but putting someone in a hotel temporarily is just a Band-Aid. We need to be investing in long-term sustainable housing, addressing the issues of why people are experiencing homelessness, get job placement, education resources. Right. Invest in social services.
And we're rounding out with you, 2 issues that you see as particularly challenging for the district and specific things you would do about them as a city council member. Go ahead.
Sure. So number one is affordable housing. Like many of my colleagues, I share that sentiment. And the other is public education. Under the category of affordable housing, I've called for 1,000 new units in District 7 on 4 sites that are either owned or controlled by New York City. And I would push to get those RFPs going. They would be permanent, 100% affordable housing, and particularly low-income housing for the residents of District 7. I agree with my colleague Lena about housing first. That's a policy which tries to address the underlying causes of homelessness and people who are housing insecure first before we address any other issues and challenges that they may be facing. That also includes preservation of affordable housing, including HDFC co-ops and fully funding the repairs in NYCHA. For public education, I'm really pleased that the Alliance for Quality Education Coalition for Fiscal Equity lawsuit has finally been not just settled, but we're starting to see real money, billions of dollars coming in into the city, and it'll come into District 7 to help equalize the inequalities in our school system. That was State Senator Robert Jackson, who has endorsed my campaign, and I'm really pleased to see that that's going to give us an opportunity to try and address some of the challenges, including smaller classroom sizes, additional secondary language education, improved teacher pay, and some other things as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that was, I think, a very informative round of thoughtful commentary on challenges facing the district and a lot of specific thoughts on things you try to do. So just about everybody, if not everybody, mentioned housing, and that's where we're going next, as I said. So let's talk a little bit more. Let's drill down on affordability, on housing, on development. This is less a specific question and more about how you would approach housing, development, land use issues as a city council member for the district. And what I'd like you to try to address in the answer is there room in this district for more housing development? What kind of development should it be? You've heard some people already in this debate talk about trying to do away with the city's mandatory inclusionary housing program, which, as I mentioned before, tries to leverage upzonings to leverage the private market to subsidize some portion of affordable units in those developments, in those rezoned areas. So if you could speak about what your approach would be to housing and development and affordability in the district, that would be great. And we're going to talk to, and if there's specific projects, rezonings in the district that you want to bring up, I think that would also be informative to voters as well, of course. So we're going to start with Maria here and then move along in the same order. So Maria, go ahead. What would be your approach to affordability and development in the district?
So I think first and foremost, we need to center the community first. We need to make sure that in all land use procedures and zoning procedures, people in the district have a voice. And that means starting with the ULURP process. The ULURP process, I think, is not representative of what we need in this city and this district. We need to make sure that in all parts of the process, it's not in the hands of power, but it's in the hands of the people. The community board is good, but we need more than that. We need to include the voices of NYCHA. We need to include the voices of HDFCs, people living in HDFCs and rent stabilized apartments. And beyond that, we also need to make sure, I mentioned before, with the mandatory inclusionary housing program, we need to make sure that we're not incentivizing private developers and not upzoning communities of color, which has been a cycle that's happened in the city. We need to make sure that instead we're creating forms of community land trust, social housing, forms of housing like I live right now, 3033 Broadway, what used to be Mitchell-Lama, but it's now not a Mitchell-Lama. We need those forms of housing that center the community and will actually provide affordable housing. And in terms of the question about if we have room for development in this district, I think we do have room for development, but it needs to be with the community. It needs to make sure that we're expanding public land and using that for the community to ensure there are affordable housings that reflect the income of this community. Area median income is not going to do that. We need to make sure we have a holistic view and look at the community and ensure that they can actually afford that apartment.
And
so
briefly, Maria, are there geographic areas of the district that you think could be home to more housing development?
Yeah, I mean, there are developments that are happening right now in Hamilton Heights. We need to make sure that any and all development that's happening is actually affordable. And there's space there. There's some vacant, buildings that have been used. We need to make sure that all units are, affordable. And when Columbia expands onto where I live in West Harlem, we need to make sure that all units that Columbia creates are actually affordable and are giving back to the community and are not displacing them as we see.
Okay. Thank you. Corey, your framework on housing affordability and housing development.
Yeah, so I believe there is space to build in the district. I think about a month ago or two, Marty, Dan, Stacy and I were at a site on 147th, 48th in Amsterdam, where it was a clear example of, in that case, a developer building affordable housing. We were advocating for not just housing for shelter, single room occupancy, but real permanent affordable housing. There is room. Now, what type of affordable housing? There are many ways to go about it. There's advocating on the federal level to change the MMI. Back on the city level, we can subsidize and seek out developers if they want to build truly affordable housing. If that's not their thing, then work with nonprofit organizations, community land trust, and also working with organizations and then Councilmember Jamani Williams to pass the racial impact study intro that would analyze any potential zoning or building and the effects of communities of color. Follow-up question?
Yeah, am I hearing you say that you don't see there really being much room for new market rate housing development in the district?
There can be a market rate as of right, but my position as a council member and everyone in this room, there's a housing crisis, not a luxury crisis. So I'm not going to spend my resources and time and legislative authority thinking about the market rate, because that's not the need of our collective community. Again, housing crisis.
Right. The theory, I suppose, goes that the rezonings that allow the mandatory inclusionary housing rezonings that allow for more market rate housing helps create the subsidy for some affordable housing, but that's not a trade-off that you want to look to make.
For whom, right? So the advocates that I've been talking to over the months, they help middle class folk, right? And my age, if you look at the price and what income you would have to make versus low income, I have the lower part of the income in our district. These are the people that I have to help first.
Ray, over to you.
Great question. Three things. One, when I was in government working for BPDS, we were one of the first to come out against mandatory inclusionary housing in favor of a neighborhood by neighborhood approach. And we also worked with Mark Levine to pass the access to council and tenant court. We actually were on that bill and helped get it done. In regards to areas in the district, again, I point to Gail Brewer's application to the Downtown Revitalization Initiative by the State Regional Economic Development Council. That application highlighted this area along 135th, where there's a massive opportunity to leverage and activate underutilized parcels. And thirdly, we have this worst landlords list that comes out for the last decade that has absolutely no consequence, published every year by the public advocate. It is time to legislate consequences for that list, and I'm open to taking those properties from those bad landlords. Thank you.
And sorry, your view on the mandatory inclusionary housing program at this point remains what it was when you worked with the Bronx Borough President, or has it changed?
No, it remains the same. We agreed that it was, we talked about it, we spent a lot of time on it, and we really felt that the neighborhood by neighborhood approach makes more sense because New York City is such a complicated market of markets. You look at different community boards by objective metrics by various community boards that are right by each other, whether it's liquor licenses, vacancy rates, square footage. You've got community boards that are right by each other that by objective metrics are vastly different. So to go by MIA, and again, we've built our housing policy back to 421A, overemphasize private developers instead of focusing. And I agree with my colleagues that we need to focus on nonprofit developers.
Thank you. Yeah, before we get into any other technical terms, we'll leave it there for now. But that's another housing program. Luis, over to you on your framework on housing and development.
Yes, it is very important to take into account this in our neighborhood, since we lost more than 6,000 units from 2011 and 2013. And 2017. So because we were the targets of the people looking for apartments in the city, and the landlord abuse, raise the rent and take those apartments to the market price. So I think it's very important. For example, for 145th rezoning. So I'm agree with the rezoning if that provided a space for the small business in the bottom, a street level, but affordable for the tenants with the income of this community, and the amount of units should be built in the same amount in the same portions of the people according to the income. So if we have it, like, for example, 75% of the people, they make it from 35 or to 65,000 this is going to be the affordable for those people. And then the rest of the, well, it should be part of the 100% affordable for the community, including everyone. So I continue to fight to have these affordable units for everybody here, even the rezoning on the 45th, also the rezoning on the 25th, because we don't want the past the same that happened when the Columbia expansion to 197C, which one is Robert Jackson responsible for that.
Sean, go ahead on your framework for housing and development and how to create more affordability in the district.
Yeah, I think we need to create a truly affordable housing. This means deeply affordable units that are at least, and don't hold me to it, opponents, at least 30% of the AMI, right? When you look at 30% of the AMI for a family of one, that's a family making $25,000. And also when you talk about 50% and 80%, right, of the AMI to support middle earners and also young professionals who aren't captured in new development project, I think that's something we have to consider. That's the ELA term sheet. With respect to development, I think there is a place, for development. The Morningside Heights Community Coalition, I've worked with them and the residents at Morningside Gardens. We know that luxury super talls that are out of context is not the way to go. I think we can create density in a way that's contextual with the neighborhood's needs. And that's what I'm fighting for. And that's why I'm working with MHCC and several of the residents in Morningside Gardens.
And do you think the district should, be welcoming some upzoning, some rezonings to add to the overall city housing stock, even if, a chunk of that is market rate housing that, every sort of district in the borough and in the city needs to add a lot, add significantly more housing, even if the focus is on the affordable housing side of things?
Well, when we do development in neighborhoods that are high opportunity, right, like Morningside or the Upper West Side, the fact that you're already doing it in these neighborhoods, the cost and the fair market value of the apartment units, because it is in these neighborhoods, it helps pay for it on its own. So no, I will not support that, the fair market. I think we can make it affordable. And I think that every neighborhood, whether it's Gowanus, Soho, wherever you live, we all bear an obligation to create density for the city's overall total of affordable housing units that we need.
Okay. Marty.
I first want to say, I agree with Corey on AMI. We need to make sure that we're addressing the needs and expanding so people are able to afford their homes. And we need community-led voices at the table. Sean mentioned the Morningside Heights Community Coalition, which has been doing incredible work working as neighbors to address zoning issues. Zoning has to be reflective of the needs of the community, not the needs of a real estate developer, but the needs of the people who reside there, the small businesses that are there. So we need their voices at the table. And I think we can further fund paid staffers for our community boards to help educate not only the board, but the people of the district about when a developer comes in, they have flashy presentations, but let's really explain what that means. What does that impact going to have on the district, and invest in organizations like Hester Street, who are doing this work on the ground, invest in these community coalitions. So the zoning is reflective of the needs of the community. And so it actually is affordable housing. Let's, before we talk about upzoning our district, which, will displace people, let's upzone a wealthy district like Soho, let's focus on that and help the people of our district.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. That was going to be my quick follow-up. You mentioned sort of community needs and concerns versus real estate developers, but in between those things or adjacent to them is also sort of citywide need. And I suppose you sort of answered that there by saying let's upzone in wealthier areas first. But is there any sort of responsibility for every city council district, every area in the city to contribute to more housing development in the city?
I mean, I think when we're putting housing in our district, it has to be affordable for the people who live in this district. We're already working on that. Let's work with the other 50 council members to make sure that we're doing this equitably so people aren't displaced, so people don't lose their homes, so communities and small businesses aren't pushed out.
Over to you, Dan.
Thanks, Ben. There are 4 sites in the district that either owned or controlled by the city. One is 110th. That's the Amsterdam, that's the Con Ed substation site. The next is 128th in Amsterdam, which is the old bus depot site. The next is the RKO theater site on 146th and Broadway. And lastly is the Safety City site at 158th and Riverside Drive. All 4 sites together combined would help create more than 1,000 units of affordable housing, and we should absolutely demand that they be permanently affordable housing. 3 of those are actually owned by the city itself. The last one is owned privately, but is controlled by the community board. And I've been leading an effort at Community Board 9, that's the RKO site 146, to make sure that that site preserves a historic landmark that's critical to West Harlem's heritage, as well as also building affordable housing on that site, permanently 100% affordable housing. A couple of references were made to Morningside Heights Community Coalition. Morningside Heights has been, the MHCC is proposing a rezoning. It's a community-driven bottom-up process, which has been a terrific opportunity for residents to express their concerns and to support a rezoning of Morningside Heights, which will preserve affordable housing stock and create new units as well. And lastly, I just want to acknowledge Corey's excellent comment about the site on Amsterdam, which is a church site in the 140s, which is being proposed to be developed into a shelter. And the community board, and I know that my colleagues Stacy and Marty were there as well, we've called for that site to be permanently affordable housing, not a shelter, which will have a 7-year contract and then at some point in the future wind up becoming expensive student housing, but become permanent affordable housing so people can become part of the community. And we've even proposed increasing the density. That's how critical we think it is to the city's infrastructure. You made also, Ben, a comment about every district should do its part, and I think it should. Every district should. Some districts have done more than others. I don't know if Community Board 7 has done, Council District 7 has done enough, particularly in Morningside Heights, which is why I support the Morningside Heights Community Coalition rezoning.
All right, you stole my follow-up question. So
there we go.
Moving on to Keith, please discuss your framework on making the district more affordable when it comes to housing and how you think about development.
Well, once again, being the voice of the everyday person, I hear about plans for creating affordable housing, but let's talk about the housing issues we have now. Someone mentioned grant houses. I went to every apartment in 75 LaSalle and 55 LaSalle, and some of the high levels of dilapidation by NYCHA that has been allowed, it should be criminal. In 2011, 2012, there was $13 billion worth of maintenance upgrades that needed to be made. Fast forward to now, we're at 38 billion. So I can't really think about building something for the future unless we can take care of what we have today. And one of the solutions that I have is to utilize what they have in Vienna, Austria, which is the social housing model, where the government comes in to regulate and the city comes in to regulate the percentage that you would have to pay based on your income. Right now at New York City, it's very high. If you make this much, your landlord can keep charging you this much, and even higher. So we have to level that out so we can take care of the housing that we have now and then balance it before we move forward to affordable housing in the future.
Okay. And do you think there are areas of the district that would be smart places for increased housing development?
Yes, the bus depot, as mentioned previously by Dan. There's also a huge area between 125th and 135th Street moving on the Riverside area. I mean, you can find places to build affordable housing, but you can't take care of the B situation unless you take care of the A situation, which is getting the people right now and getting in a comfortable space. Okay,
Stacy, over to you.
Great. So I agree with what most of my colleagues said. We clearly need to address affordable housing, and institutions like Columbia University and others are big developers in this area. What's alarming to me is folks just aren't talking, right? And there doesn't seem to be a cohesive housing plan across the district. So what I'm proposing is there's an actual cohesive housing plan across the district, starting from Washington Heights, West Harlem, into the Upper West Side, including stakeholders like Columbia University, residents from Grant, Manhattanville, et cetera. I also believe we need to increase transparency and empower the community board so that these items that come up are not last minute items, that there's actual communication and transparency involved before we make decisions on what's being developed in the neighborhood, particularly when it comes to the character of the neighborhood. When I did a tour with Morningside Heights Coalition, and I'm sure most of my colleagues on this call have worked with Morningside's coalition, they mentioned that a lot of these developments were a surprise to them, right? And they were pushed by major institutions. So we need to start holding those institutions accountable. And then finally, if I had my dream, Ben, I really want to create a pipeline for those that are living in public housing to leave public housing, get into affordable housing, whether it's HDFC, and then finally home ownership.
Okay, and quickly, do you, when you talk about having a housing plan for the district, what are a couple of the quick, sort of tenets of that?
So I think we need to assess the current mayor's housing plan and see which apartments are available. I think the current housing plan has not been maximized and has been underutilized. So we need to see where to maximize the current mayor's housing plan. And then also, I'm a firm believer in community land trusts, right? And working with residents and nonprofits to identify land that can be owned by the community. And then also, I had a great conversation with the West Harlem Development Corp. How do we support nonprofits and churches that own property to develop on their property?
Thank you. Okay, Lena, you're going to round us out here, but tell us about your housing and development vision.
As I said before, there should be a moratorium on rezonings. The MIH program was originated in white, wealthy neighborhoods in another state like Maryland, and it worked well to integrate a white neighborhood with low-income tenants coming in. But when you use that same formula in low-income areas, it has the opposite effect. It is the effect of decimating Black and brown low-income communities. That is, we have to stop the craziness of the rezonings. Just stop it. Stop the gaslighting. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Two things. One, I think I don't think really there's much disagreeing with you in terms of the fact that mandatory inclusionary housing is really designed for sort of wealthier areas.
We have to stop defaulting to looking to developers, right?
So for this district, then, how do you create more affordability? How do you create more affordable housing? And are you okay with a trade-off? Are you okay with a trade-off where it's far fewer new units because you're making sure that everything is significantly subsidized to be close to fully affordable housing?
The city is the largest landowner in New York City. They own more than 50% of the land. And we need a mayor that's friendly to our platforms of affordable housing, using CLTs, using social programs. This is, it's crucial because right now, the mayor that we have has been it has been terrible on this. He's the one that's been pushing the rezonings.
Okay.
And he's very developer friendly. We need somebody. Right. We need keys people in positions. I have fought for Safety City, and it's owned by the Department of Transportation, and they flat out want to use it just for
moving on to our next round. Thank you. So this is another somewhat open-ended question. This is perhaps even more open-ended than generally asking you about your housing vision and development vision. But this is about sort of living in the district, livability. Sometimes people often use the phrase quality of life issues. That can mean many different things to many different people. It often means, generally speaking, getting around the district, what the sort of streets are like, what it's like, in terms of sometimes things like cleanliness, public safety, but it's also about transit. So what I'm asking you each is when you think about livability, when you think of quality of life issues, what's top of mind for you about making the district a nicer, easier place to live on a daily basis for the residents of the district, the visitors of the district, the people who work in the district or own businesses in the district? When you think about a livable city, a livable district and quality of life issues, what's top of mind? And what would you pursue as a council member to make it a more livable district with better quality of life? We're going to start with Marty on this round.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we all love our district, of course, but there are issues that need to be addressed. Sanitation has to be fully funded. Our campaign has hosted a series of trash cleanups. We just did one with Stacy last week. I've done them with Dan and Corey and other candidates. We need to make sure that we're investing in composting in our parks, making sure that the noise of the motorbikes that zoom, zoom, zoom down the street, that's a quality of life issue, making sure that we're keeping our streets safe in that way, making sure we're investing in our youth programs so our parks are safe and our young people have SYAP and places to work and go, making sure that we're investing in our playgrounds and our dog parks so people have safe places to congregate and to be. I think it's about, making sure our buses and our businesses are ADA compliant and accessible to everyone. Our subways are accessible to everyone, working with our legislators in Albany to update our subway systems and expanding the open streets. Carlina's bill just passed yesterday. So let's expand open streets in our district, expand at bus lanes, protected bike lanes and pedestrian ways. These are all quality of life issues that we can do block by block in our district.
I'm glad you brought up the motorbikes. That's something that I know has been an issue in the district, but what do you do about that?
I think there's a couple of different things that we can do to address motorbikes. I get calls all the time about it. So one thing, I can't remember the name of the city, but they did this thing where they put in like how there's like skate parks for skateboarders. I have to look to see what city it was, but they put in like a motorbike park so people have a place to go that's not putting people in danger on the street or causing noise pollution. I look to Justin Brannan, Councilmember Brannan's Act, the Sleep Act, making sure that we're keeping noise pollution down at night. But it's not just about giving people a space to go to recreationally hang out, but also making sure we're not putting people in harm's way on our street. So
thank you. Dan, quality of life, livable district. What are you prioritizing and what are you doing about it? Go ahead.
Sure. So Marty's right about sanitation, and I was pleased to co-sponsor several of those neighborhood cleanups and see some of my other candidate colleagues there as well. That's been a real issue, is picking up the trash and trying to maintain sanitation in the district. The district has different issues that confront different pieces of it. But one thing that impacts it almost entirely is the lack of access to ADA accessible transportation. The only elevator in the entire district is at 96th Street at the subway station, the 2-3 train, 123 stop there, which is why I've called actually for the creation of the Metro North Amtrak stop at 125th and 12th, because that'll create a fully ADA accessible ride into Midtown in 8 minutes and make provide access to people who have mobility issues to get in and around the city. And that would be also fully funding and protecting our bus service from being cut, one of really the only component of the transportation system that's fully compliant. Marty also mentioned small businesses, and I would want to make sure that we can help them get back on their feet or reopen. I've called for a capital fund which would invest in small businesses directly, as opposed to providing them loans, providing investments in those small businesses to start and restart, particularly targeting minority and women-owned businesses in particular. And lastly is the parks, which have been sort of a refuge for all of us during this pandemic, an opportunity for us to be outside and get some air when so many other things were shut down. I serve on a number of park organizations, and keeping them healthy. I've been involved for years with Morningside, Friends of Morningside Park.
Thank you. Keith, over to you. A livable district, a livable city, quality of life issues. What's top of mind, and what are some things you pursue as a council member?
Okay, so top of mind, if I'm worrying about paying my bills and paying my rent when I go to sleep, if I'm worrying about that when I'm waking up, when I go to work, I don't want to worry about parking. Not everyone can afford a parking lot. And listen, I love what city bikes can do for your health, but they take up way too much parking space. And if you want to talk about carbon footprint, if you want to talk about the environment, if everyone's driving around looking for parking, they're burning fuel, they're burning gas. So that's one thing that I think would make it more livable, is to have more parking areas available. And then also restoration and preservation of our landmarks. There's the Metro Theater on the Upper West Side. I think that space can be utilized for a performance arts theater. Also, you look at what the American Youth Hostel on 103rd Street used to be versus what it is now, bringing in people from all around the world. We have to use what we have to enhance what we want to see eventually in the future.
Keith, on the issue of parking, don't you think it is wise to try to get people out of their cars to begin with? I heard your point, obviously, about about not wanting people driving around all the time looking for parking, but what about trying to get them out of the cars in the first place and onto buses?
Well, I think that's a viable means of transportation. But if you have a family of 4, a family of 3, especially in the post-pandemic world, it may not be to your best interest health-wise, especially until everyone is vaccinated. So your refuge may be your car or your automobile. So I think if this were pre-pandemic, sure, I agree. But now for some people, the safest mode of transportation is their automobile.
Hopefully by the time one of you wins this election and takes office, we will be in that better place on vaccination that you mentioned. Stacy, over to you on quality of life, livability issues. What's front and center for you?
A number of things. You know, when small businesses are closed, that's a telltale sign to me that quality of life in a district is in trouble. And so I think we need to address investing in small businesses. I agree with Dan that the reinvestment in small businesses is critically important, which is why I'm also, Dan, proposing a fund to reinvest in small businesses and small business owners that live in the district. Secondly, sanitation is a huge deal within this district. We need to, you know, not only introduce policy, but also take care of constituents and their constituent needs, and that includes sanitation. Housing, I would include that on the list as well. If you're worried about paying your rent or paying your bills, how do you function as a human being, as an adult, right? And then transportation is also critically important. And Ben, I'd like to address the motorbikes that go up and down our district. You know, I'm born and raised in Harlem, and you know, I do agree that finding a safe space for those that participate in the motorbikes is very critical, but it's also somewhat to a cultural issue as well. And I think you have to have leadership that is willing to talk to the folks and understand where this is coming from and how to address that issue in a very real way.
What do you think a solution is there?
I mean, I think part of it is talking to some of the folks that organize it. You know, to be very frank with you, I know some of the groups that get on their bikes and go out there and ride throughout Harlem and the Upper West Side. And I think it's a conversation that we need to have with them as well as the local precinct. You know, during the pandemic, I organized a task force with State Senator Brian Benjamin, Congressman Aspiat, and others to address issues such as fireworks, gun violence during the pandemic. And I think we need to model the same type of thing dealing with issues like that.
Okay, Lena, over to you.
I think that the recycling is a failure. 60% of recyclables are winding up in incinerators in New Jersey, mucking up our air. That means wood furniture that winds up on the sidewalks and gets carted away. All of that is being burned, which is not good for our environment. Greening areas, greening spaces. Their studies show that it's good for our mental health, and it lowers violent crime to have green everywhere. That's something that I would love to see more of throughout the district. The bikes, these motorbikes, I agree with Stacy. I think it's a cultural issue. We don't complain of Harley Davidsons, and I think that the people that are riding on these bikes are being targeted. I think we can come up with a compromise.
Okay, Maria, over to you on what you're thinking about a livable district and quality of life issues top of mind, and what you try to do about them if elected. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So, you know, first and foremost, we need to address the issues of sanitation, and we need to make sure that every community actually has access to composting and recycling. There's no reason why we see composting and recycling in the Upper West Side, but we don't see it in the 2/3 of the district in West Harlem and Washington Heights. There's a divide there culturally, and you know, growing up, we don't know about recycling or composting, but we need to make sure that we're providing access to that to everyone. At the same time, I'm an advocate for a Green New Deal for the state of New York, and that means cutting down on buildings emissions, making sure we're talking about the climate crisis at schools, and making sure that we have more sustainable buildings and creating a jobs program, that stuff that will actually support the quality of this community. And on top of that, I support what Dan said, a Metro North station, but I'll add one thing to it. if we don't make it accessible and or reduce price or free for working class people, then it'll just be an upper class thing. So we need to make sure that it's actually accessible to everyone, and that we have a fair fares program for that, or we have a truly free for everyone. On top of that, I also think that we need to protect bike lanes. We need to reduce car culture. I know that's going to be hard, but we need to start somewhere, and we need to expand bike lanes and make sure we have more open streets. Like Lena said, it does help mental health, and it will ultimately help this district in supporting small businesses and creating a space for community.
Thank you. Corey, over to you.
Yeah, and I'm just going to piggyback off of Stacy. There are times where legislation isn't the answer, and that we just have to be organizers, right? So my belief is that the next city council person should be an organizer in chief. And in that situation with the bikes, organizing the community, talking to the person, socially distanced, 6 feet, all that, but organizing a solution and finding a safe space so that motorcyclists can say, okay, this is our space within the parameters of safety. With regards to quality of issue, mental health and homeless outreach, I know that Marty, through mutual aid groups, and Maria have also done outreach. My belief is it's not just moving folks off the street, right? And saying, okay, just shoo away. That's just a Band-Aid, but really addressing the underlying issues and constantly, keyword constantly, bringing mental health resources and homeless resources. It's been done in our district on 138th between Broadway and off of going into 12th Avenue, where there was an encampment, and department working with the tenants association, the block association, constantly bringing resources to the people where they felt safe. And the choice is there, but make sure they have the resources. Lastly, park maintenance and retrofitting spaces, right? It's not just enough to make sure that we have a park space, but make sure that it's maintained properly. Make sure that it's clean, make sure that it's accessible. But retrofitting, for example, Jacob Ship Park can be retrofitted to introduce a skate park. And I've been working with different advocates to see if we can bring that possibility to West Harlem.
Corey, if you're the city council member and people call your district office and they say there's a homeless encampment outside of my apartment building, it's bothering me. I don't want it there. I was going to call the police, but I called you first. Can you do something about this? What's your response?
Yes, my belief, and many others here in the room, that not every 911 call should be a police interaction. This is one of the, if they call me, I'm going to show up in person, right? Or any one of my other colleagues going to show up in person, talk to the folks and say, hey, I'm going to bring resources to you, working with Department of Homeless Services, working with DOH. Literally, this is their job. This is their function as a city agency to address these issues and come on site, making people feel safe and constantly coming back with the resources. So, and if they decide to accept it, great, but make sure they constantly have it at the forefront.
Thank you. Very, very generous of you to assume all your competitors would show up at the scene of a district issue.
I would.
That's kind of you.
We have to pull up.
Yes,
pull up.
Good. I'm not shining you on. I believe everyone in this room would do that.
That's great. Ray, over to you. Livability, quality of life issues. What's top of mind, and what are some things specifically you pursue if elected?
Thank you. I love this question because when I was in government, I drafted the first ever Bronx Quality of Life Survey. It had almost 2,000 responses. We had over 60 questions. We tackled everything from policing to education. It was bilingual. It was online. It was in paper. It was through the community boards. It was a tremendous success. And so I'm a big believer in really talking about quality of life issues, and that's a big part of what city government does. I've done trash cleanups with Marty and Sean. I would love to see discretionary funding going towards Big Belly or similar type solar compactors, right along over the 1 train on 157 Broadway, constant source of overflowing trash bins. I agree, parking has gotten exacerbated because we don't have enough parking, right? The number of cars have gone up, parking spots have gone down because of city bike and the pandemic, right? So when you have that, supply and demand, disorientation, it's a real problem. In regards to the bikes, I saw on Instagram a guy being arrested because he forgot to register. His registration was outdated. You can take the bikes and not arrest people, right? You don't want to criminalize youth because they're riding illegal street bikes, and dirt bikes. Seize the bikes, right? You can create a program where if you do the right things to get the bikes back, maybe a couple warnings or a couple strikes. But before we don't need to criminalize kids for riding dirt bikes, but we can't take the bikes.
And quickly, Ray, on the parking issue, what's your solution there? You want to try to create more parking in the district?
Yes, we
How-
can create more parking in the
how would you
district.
do that?
We can do that, but we can move a lot of these city bike docking stations to areas where there's more capacity. Right, I was at the farmers market at Columbia University on Broadway and 114th. You have really wide sidewalks there. Right, we can move city bikes to a lot of those wider sidewalks and get them out of park or and off the streets.
Okay. Luis, over to you. Livability, quality of life issues. Go ahead.
Let me start it from the West side. When I ran in 2013 for city council, the complaint of people there were that Douglas houses and too many rats around there. So visiting those days, so people they have the same complaint. So what are we gonna do with the rat? But the rat is not only on Douglas houses, but all over the district. So when I join in at night on River House path, I'm scared because I saw how many rats just cross in front of me. So this is one issue. The other one is that we have a lot of homelessness that come to this neighborhood. And 137, 136 is incredible. Homeless from all over the city, from Brooklyn, from where. And the city council, the actual city council, do nothing to stop this. We have to regulate this as well. So also the Riverbank State Park. So we have a lot of high rate of asthma in the neighborhood. So who's control the gas emission of this plant? So it's something that we have to control. And finally, the new restaurant. So people complaining because at night, they did it before. So with people, they hanging out, those new restaurants that we have in the neighborhood. So the people on the above, those restaurants, the tenants, they say, oh, people talking outside, drinking. This is ridiculous. So we mark more today that we're gonna have the space outside. The restaurant can use it. So those tenants are after 10 or 11 at night, so they can sleep. So and something else. So when you're jogging on Riverside, you see so many people smoking. I'm sorry, Corey, that you like small cigar. I'm a small cigar, so but the hookah. You see people, you're jogging, saying, what's going on in this neighborhood? So we have to control those in order to see this is a safe neighborhood, not only for me, but for the children.
Thank you. And Sean, we're coming to you to round out this round on quality of life and livability issues in the district. Maybe you have something, it's hard to go last here, but do you have some things that haven't been said yet or some different ways?
There are things that, most of the things I was gonna say has been said, but there are certain things, for instance, Lisa Tejada points to an issue that's very much pervasive in District 7, rat infestation. It was actually the top of my agenda. We're seeing it in Park West Village, for instance. There's a rat infestation problem on 100th and Manhattan Avenue. That there's a big issue there right next to Douglas. So like we said, but we have that throughout District 7. So whatever containment measures we can explore, I'll be looking into that. With respect to ADA accessibility for transportation, I think we need an elevator installed at 125th Street train station. Not everybody who's disabled can get through the station alone on just the escalator. We need elevators there installed. So it's one of the things I'm pushing forward. As like everyone said, sanitation issues, we need to restore our sanitation budget and have composting everywhere. On top of that, our small businesses like Harlem Public, for instance, had a cease and desist letter issued against them because they were out of compliance with respect to safety barriers that they installed. The city keeps changing regulation on our small businesses, and we need to change that so that our small businesses aren't taking that hit. And so there should be a grace period, for instance. The city should be sending these materials directly to our small businesses so they can be in compliance, and the small business doesn't have to incur the risk of being out of compliance and therefore affecting our social fabric of our neighborhoods.
Okay. All right. We are now going into our lightning round of yes, no, or short answer questions. We're going to do about half a dozen of these and then move into closing statements. Obviously, as we get into the lightning round, we haven't had the opportunity to talk about so many things. Part of the reason I asked a number of open-ended questions is to give voters a chance to really hear from you. What are some of the district issues that are top of mind? Obviously, affordability and housing needed to be part of the conversation as well. But I think viewers and voters have gotten a sense of some of the things that you consider top priorities. And that was a big goal of all getting together here. But obviously, we can't get to every issue. And it's unfortunate that there's several that we haven't been able to discuss in detail. But let's get to a few other things here in a lightning round, and then you'll have minute closing statements to touch on whatever you like and make your closing argument there. So I will again call on people for these short answers as we go here. We're going to start the first one with Stacy, and the first question is, in the city council, what issue committee would you most like to chair if elected? What issue committee would you like to chair in the city council? Stacy.
Education.
Lena.
Land use.
Maria.
Committee on Education.
Corey.
Government operations with a focus on changing the city charter.
Ray.
Land use.
Luis.
Housing.
Sean.
Housing and buildings.
Marty.
Small business.
Dan.
Housing.
Keith.
Small business.
Name one transit improvement for the district that you would pursue if elected to the city council. One transit improvement. Let's start with Sean.
The ADA elevator, ADA accessible elevator on 125th Street.
Marty.
Expanded bus and bike lanes.
Dan.
125th Street and 12th Avenue stop.
Keith.
Accessibility.
Stacy.
125th Street accessibility and curbside accessibility.
Lena.
ADA compliance throughout the district.
Maria.
ADA compliance throughout the districts of elevators and protected bike lanes.
Corey.
Others have said already, but 145th Street Station, prevent the flooding when it rains. It's unbearable, whether it's ADA compliant or not.
Ray.
I'm going to agree with my colleagues, ADA compliance on public transit.
And Luis.
Public transit, 123th Street elevators.
The city council often has this informal policy called member deference on land use matters, where the full council defers to the member in the local district where the land use issue is at play, and the council is voting on a change to land use rules, often rezonings and projects and upzonings and such. Do you support a blanket member deference policy in the city council? Yes or no? Dan.
No, I'm going to vote my values.
Keith.
No.
Stacy.
No.
Lena.
No.
Maria.
No.
Corey.
No, so people's values are heard.
Ray.
Yes, I support member deference.
Luis.
No.
Sean.
No.
And Marty.
Nope. No.
All right, we had a little one exception there. That's good for people to hear. Okay. How long have you lived in this city council district? Lena.
All my life.
Maria.
I was born and raised here my whole life.
Corey.
Whole life, 37 years, I think.
Ray.
I grew up in the Baruch NYC houses, and I've been a homeowner in this district for 15 years.
Okay, Luis.
3685. It was
85 is good. We can do the math later. Sean.
Collectively over 18 years.
Marty.
I first moved to the district in 2006.
Okay.
50
Dan.
years. I think I've lived in the
Yes,
district
you
longer
said
than
that,
anybody
right.
else in the district.
Right. Keith
36 years.
and Stacy.
I want to say since 1990.
Okay, very good. Last couple, there's the proposal. It's moving ahead in some places, but it's moved very slowly, but it's been kicking around for many years to develop what's called infill housing in NYCHA on underused NYCHA land. There's debate over levels of affordability, who it should be for, but generally speaking, are you open to some new housing development on underutilized NYCHA land? Ray.
The way you wrote, you said it, yes.
Luis.
No.
Sean.
No.
Marty.
No, only public housing on public land.
Dan.
Only affordable housing on public land.
Keith.
Only affordable housing on public land.
All right, we're straying from the format here, but I guess those are yeses. Okay, Stacy.
I have to say no, I'm against infills.
Okay, Lena.
Is that like privatization of NYCHA? Because that would definitely be
It's
out.
allowing some private
No.
private development on NYCHA land.
Absolutely not.
All right, Maria.
No.
Corey.
No, unless it's deeply affordable. So not private.
So yes, under certain circumstances. All right, last couple. Do you think there should be a residential parking permit system in the city? Let's start with Marty.
Yes.
Dan.
No, there's been some studies which suggest if you create a parking permit system, you increase car ownership. So
Thank
no.
you. Keith.
No.
Stacy.
No, but I'm open to hearing others' arguments.
Lena.
Yes.
Maria.
I'm gonna say no because in the time we're living right now, we need to reduce car culture and
Corey.
extend, and yeah.
Yes, by pilot program in
Start with a pilot. Ray.
Yes, start with a pilot.
Luis.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes, start with a pilot. Outside
Last-
the years would actually be bringing less cars to the city.
Last two. There is a mayoral race happening at the same time as this one, of course, and another crowded Democratic primary. As of the time we're talking today, towards the end of April, who is your favorite Democratic candidate in the mayoral primary? Keith.
Andrew Yang.
Stacy.
Oh, that's so unfair, Ben. That is so unfair.
Not unfair.
I like them all, Ben. I
Hey.
like them all.
Cop out. All right, Lena.
Can we rank choice?
Sure, give me two.
All right, so Diane Morales and Scott Stringer.
Maria.
Diane Morales.
Corey.
Diane Morales, Eric Alice.
Ray.
Honestly, undecided.
Luis.
Ray and Diane Morales.
Sean.
I'm undecided.
Marty.
Diane Morales and Maya Wiley.
Dan.
I endorse Scott Stringer in December, and I'm evaluating my options in light of recent development.
All right. Yes, everyone should know we're talking right at the end of April, as I said. All right, last one. This race, of course, has ranked choice voting as well. So assuming you're going to rank yourself first, and don't tell us if you're not, who's your second choice in this race as of now? Lena.
Okay, are my opponents?
Yes.
Maria.
Okay, Maria.
Oh, thank you for that. But I still haven't decided.
Corey.
Stacy.
Ray.
Undecided.
Luis.
Undecided.
Sean.
I'm undecided.
Marty.
Undecided.
Dan.
I like Marty and Maria and Stacy and Corey. One of those four, I haven't figured out which one yet.
All right, Keith.
I love you too, Dan.
In New York City, where only the strong survive, Keith Harris is your number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
All right, don't do that.
Your ballot's disqualified.
I mess up your ballot. Don't do that, anybody. Stacy.
Of course, I want to be your number one, right? And I have to echo Dan. I like Marty, Dan, Lena, Maria, Corey, and
Okay. All right. Let's move on to closing statements here, people.
Sean also. I like Sean also.
All
I
right.
like you too, Stacy.
Okay. 1 minute closing statements. Use this however you'd like. If you want to make a broad pitch to voters and viewers watching, or if you want to highlight something we didn't get to, again, my apologies to everyone that we could only get to so much. There's so much more to discuss in any of these debates, but we got to a bunch of things. Go ahead with closing statements. We're going to start with Keith and end with Dan. Keith, your closing statement, 1 minute. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, residents of New York City, for participating. The fact that you tuned us in, we're not tuning you out. We're listening to everything that you're saying. And I feel, for me, one of my skill sets is to take what you say, what you tell me, and be able to create an innovative plan that goes from small business, that goes to community safety, that goes to education. Where we are right now, everything in the past before 2020 does not count. You know, I'm not here as a politician looking to climb the ladder. I'm here as a servant of the public and a servant of the people, and I will take my skill set best to serve you.
Thank you. Stacy.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I agree with Keith, and thank you, Ben, for being an amazing moderator. You kept us organized and focused. Listen, I will continue to fight for equity, and I believe in equality in every aspect of our lives, a character that I will carry with me, whether I'm elected or not. I want to be your council member. I have the experience, and I know how to keep the district running on day one. I often hear from folks in the district that their elected officials disappear after election day. I will not leave you. I'm here to stay. And I want to thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to working with my neighbors and the residents throughout this district. Take care.
Thank you. Lena.
I have actually been the longest person to live in the district since the 60s. So let's clear that record up.
Own that, Lena. Own it, Lena.
So I am a housing activist. I am a social worker. I have been boots on the ground. I am not a politician. I am not going in here to build out my golden parachute. I am for the community. I've been doing the work. I've been fighting. I've been in the struggle. And I will continue to do that. I want to take the fight to City Hall, and I want to start to make some real changes. I'm unbossed and I'm unbought. So, and I am unafraid. So I'm planning on going in there. If you elect me, you will have somebody that is for the people, the voice of the people.
Thank you. Maria.
Well, thank you everyone who tuned in, and thank you, Ben, for hosting this. It was a great forum, great debate, actually. I'm running for city council because it's time for change. It's time that we have true representation at the local level. We need to fight for truly affordable housing, fully funded public education, a Green New Deal for this city, and we need to fight to fully have our voices represented. I'm not attached to real estate. I'm not taking a cent from real estate, not a cent from corporate interests, and I'm here by the people, for the people. I'm here to be a voice for everyone in this community, and I know it's that time for change. And if elected, I'd be the first woman to represent this district. I know we have other women here in this forum. So either one of us would be a first woman to represent this district, and we desperately need women of color to represent and at the local level. And it's time to have that change. It's time to have that representation. And I know we can do this, and we have a movement behind us to make this happen. And I know we can take it to City Hall and actually bring change to 2021 and beyond.
Thank you. Corey.
Hey, everyone. So Ben Max said something in the beginning that whoever's going to be the next council member is going to make decisions that will make or break our district. And I'm running for city council because I want to make sure that we have public safety and fighting gun violence with Cure Violence organizations and fighting for deeply affordable housing. But the great thing is I'm not the only one with great ideas, right? We have ranked choice voting. And even though I want to be your number one and to highlight a few, not all, because I don't have time, but also consider voting for Stacey Lynch, who wants to have a dedicated housing advocate. Also consider voting for Marty Gold Cummings, Green New Deal. Also consider voting for Maria Ordonez, who's the next generation leadership advocating for a CUNY New Deal. And also vote for Dan Cohn, who wants to bring a 12th Avenue Amtrak stop. We don't, just because we have good ideas doesn't mean that we're your only choice. We have great ideas, and whoever wins from these 4 or 5 total is going to be a council member that you'll be proud of. Thank you.
Corey is a real gentleman.
Yeah, again,
Yes,
Corey,
he is.
very generous. Ray, over to you.
Thank you very much. And after 4 years of Trump, 7 years de Blasio incompetence, and the stakes are higher they've ever been. We need people who know a lot, have done the work, and who are experienced, qualified public servants. I'm an attorney with a 20-year career across diverse sectors, and fundamentally, we have to fix public education. Because if we don't fix public education, talent will not stay. If talent doesn't stay, employers will leave. And employers are already talking about unloading tons of real estate. JP Morgan was on the cover of Cranes talking about how, and one of the largest cities, one of the largest employers, about unloading their footprint. We have to get smarter and more creative about transforming office space to new opportunities for affordable housing, educations, classroom size. Because if we don't fundamentally rethink how we use space, there is no comeback, right? New York was built on a premise you had to go vertical because you couldn't go horizontal. Technology and COVID has changed all that. And that's what we're talking about. What is your holistic vision for how we use this city for quality of life, how we get creative with space so that we build a quality of life for the people who are here and got us through this crisis.
Thank you. Luis.
As you hear, this city is in crisis. Not only this district 7, but the whole city. So it is important that you take in account that for who to vote is a person that never take a penny from corporation or landlords. I never accept any penny from none of them. So this is very important to elect somebody progressive with commitment, with the experience that I have for more than 30 years fighting for justice for our community, but also to stop the corruption in City Hall. We cannot take a chance to elect somebody being supported by landlords. We don't take a chance to support, or you cannot take a chance to support somebody that being supported by the big corporation. So it is important that you take the decision and fair choice. But if for somebody like me that been fighting for affordable housing to stop discrimination because of the most of the owners small businesses in the city are immigrants, people of color, and those elected officials that are taking money from landlords, so they don't pass the law to protect the small business and jobs. This is very important. It's your decision. Who's going to represent you in City Hall is the person that really being in the front line, fighting for you, for your children, for the education, for affordable housing, and for the small business. First choice. And then the second choice in the same way. It's not because the people had a title. It's not because I'm a long time.
And Sean,
this is your time.
Sean, over to you.
I was saying thank you, Luis, for your commitment to the neighborhood. And I know he's very committed to tenant issues. Look, I'm fighting for home. This is the place I've known my entire life. I went from being evicted as a child to becoming a tenant's right to term, helping keep families in their homes. I attended public schools in this neighborhood. I attended middle school in Manhattan Valley, elementary school in Washington Heights in the district, Columbia University in the district. This is the place I've known my entire life. And I'm gonna go to the city council to fight for all of our neighbors, families that are facing evictions, families that are facing housing insecurity and food insecurity. And I wanna bring that background as an attorney, fighting for home and fighting for our neighbors. So I'm just so grateful for all of my my colleagues here in this room. And I'm looking forward to continue working with you for the next month and a half. And I wish everyone the best.
Thank you. Marty.
Thanks so much. It's always a pleasure to join my colleagues. And like we've heard, ranked choice is an amazing new way of voting, but I believe I'm the #1 pick because the status quo isn't working. We need change. I'm proud to be the first non-binary candidate in New York City history, and I hope to bring that voice into City Hall as a gig worker, somebody who knows what it's like to go through recovery and addiction and come out of the other side, you know, somebody who's worked in our small businesses. I'm proud that our campaign is the campaign with the most individual contributions, the most money raised, and the most money raised from within the district. I'm proud to have the support of not only community leaders and people who live block by block in our community, but the endorsements of Senators Gustavo Rivera, Alessandro Biaggi, Julia Salazar, #2 from Robert Jackson, Assemblymember Yuli New and Catalina Cruz, and Council Members Van Bramer and Danny Drum. This is a coalition across the city because what happens in our district impacts the district next door and the district next door. So we have to work together to build an equitable, equal, and just city for all people. And I'm committed to bringing that into City Council. The time for change is now. If this year showed us anything, it's about showing up and being of service to our neighbors. So please join us for a trash cleanup. Join us for a PPE handout. Join me and our neighbors on Wednesday nights at 11 p.m. on 137th and Broadway to help our food insecure and unhoused neighbors who have been left out by the system. Go to our website, martyfrommanhattan.com, and learn more about our campaign and the work that we're doing, and join our movement.
And Dan, you get the next to last word before I close us out. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you all for watching. I know this has been appreciate you sticking by. I'm running for City Council because I believe I have the most energy, experience, and ideas to help our community recover from this pandemic and grow anew. I'm the elected Democratic State Committeeman for the 69th Assembly District, and I'm proud to receive the support of State Senator Robert Jackson, as well as this morning, Assemblymember Danny O'Donnell. I'm a lifelong resident of Upper Manhattan, now 50 years. I grew up in the district, and I now live with my wife and our son, Caleb, who's 8 years old and attends local public school. As a proud New York City public school graduate and a public school parent serving on the school PTA, I've seen firsthand the struggles our schools face and why tackling them is so critical. And for the last decade, I've worked at affordable housing not-for-profits, the past 7 years at the Housing Partnership. I've advocated for new affordable housing units in our district, and I've refused to accept money from real estate developers, so my perspective is clear. Next year, virtually the entire city government is changing, and new leadership must hold the police accountable, advocate for structural change to foster racial equity and LGBTQ justice, and protect the most vulnerable among us. Ultimately, I believe that climate change is the biggest threat we face as a city, a country, and a planet. I'm committed to making New York City the standard for responding to global warming. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, you've heard from a number of candidates running in Manhattan City Council District 7. We thank you for watching. We thank the candidates who've joined us, and we hope everybody is using this debate and other interviews and debates from Manhattan Neighborhood Network and Gotham Gazette to be ready to vote in the June primaries. Thank you all for participating in this debate. Thank you for watching Represent NYC election coverage from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. We will see you next time.